20 plus years of training, the crazy thing and the awesome thing about lifting is I'm always evolving and always learning new things along the way. I thought I had it all figured out 5 years into training. 10 years of training, I was certain I knew everything. But again, here at 20 plus years of training, the truth is I'm always learning and I'm always improving based on experience. And it's funny when I look back again at year 5, 10, or even 15, a lot of things that I was dead set on, which I was certain I knew, I've actually changed my mind on and I've evolved over time. So let's talk a bit about in those years what I got right, but also what I got wrong. One of the biggest things that I've changed my mind on that I definitely got wrong for a lot of years was the whole idea that volume really only mattered on a weekly basis. Meaning if you did 10 weekly sets of chest, it didn't matter how you split it up throughout the week. It was still 10 sets per week. And this is something a lot of people still debate about today, but I have a hard stance on it. The thought process is that however many sets you do in a week equals how much results you'll get. But the fact is, your body is not keeping a running tally of how many sets it did on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, etc. What the body's responding to is a stimulus. Your body is getting a stimulus, it's recovering, and it's adapting. If you create a massive stimulus on Monday, and then you don't create another stimulus until the following Monday, that's a very different process for the body than creating a small stimulus on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And in some cases, you might actually have a benefit for creating that massive stimulus, waiting a whole week and doing it again. And in other cases, it might be much more beneficial to create that smaller stimulus more frequently. Now, what I will tell you is the stronger, the more advanced you become, the stimulus and the fatigue are going to be much greater than if you're more of a beginner, right? We're currently 9 weeks out from show number 1 and 12 weeks out from show number 2, which is the pro qualifier. Now, I'm also on my last week of this current training block. This is week 12 of this block of training. So I'm going to break down in this video what I've been doing the last 12 weeks, specifically with my training. And then in another video, I'm going to break down what I'm going to do the last 12 weeks of prep. Now, this training that I have been running, this block of training, I've utilized in diet phases, gaining phases, and at contest prep, which is where I'm at right now. So I've used it strategically to not only burn fat and retain muscle, but also to build muscle. In my opinion, it's one of the most productive splits that I've run in a very long time. And it was created specifically based on where I'm at right now and what I need to continue progressing. Again, I've been doing this for 20 plus years. What I did in years 1 and 2 is just not gonna cut it at this stage. Now, the split itself is a bit of a bro split, high frequency hybrid split, meaning it has elements of body part training days, but also the high frequency element of things like push-pull legs. Again, this was specifically created for my needs, but there's a lot of tips in this here that you could apply to your training so that you could get the most out of your training. But there's a lot of tips here that you could apply to your own training so that you get the most out of your split. So let's break that down and what that exactly is. So the days I've been training are Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, with Thursday off, Friday and Saturday with Sunday off. So it's a 5-day split. Now again, there's a body part emphasis each day, but there's creative overlap, meaning that body parts are hit once directly and sometimes twice or indirectly in each one of these sessions. So Monday is a chest and shoulder day, basically a push workout. Now, I add in some creative overlap on this session, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. We're also hit the back, the rear delts, and the triceps. So it's almost a bit of a full upper body session, but again, the heart and soul and the meat and potatoes of it is a chest and shoulder workout. Now, I want you to keep in mind that at this stage in prep, I'm not necessarily log booking every single session, and it's sometimes I am training a bit more by feel. But keep in mind that the exercise patterns, the sets, the reps, and the volume overall, that's pretty much gonna stay static here. My goal at this stage is to simply maintain muscle mass as I burn fat. I'll take PRs when they're there, absolutely. I'll strive for progression any way I can, but I'm also not eating a huge surplus of calories here, expecting to get the most out of the least. So with that in mind, there's also a lot of flexibility in what I actually do during these sessions. So what I'm telling you is pretty much just a guideline and an outline that I follow. So first exercise on Monday, typically that's gonna be some type of heavy free weight compound lift. Now in the off season, that could be something as basic as a flat barbell bench or an incline barbell bench. I'm in contest prep here, I'm dieting, I'm losing body fat, I'm a bit depleted, and safety is the biggest thing here. This is not the time to be a hero. I'm not trying to break my lifetime PR on flat bench 8 weeks out from a contest. My goal is simply to stimulate as much muscle mass as possible, doing it the safest way possible. So in that case, I'm doing either a flat or an incline dumbbell press here. Typically 3 sets, anywhere from 8 to 12 repetitions. Now I say up to 12 repetitions, not because that is the most productive rep range for me, but really depending where I'm training, it really just depends on how heavy the dumbbells go. One of the gyms I primarily train at have dumbbells that go up to 120, and in that case, I'm pretty much limited to doing incline dumbbell press for 12 repetitions. Another gym that I train at has dumbbells, I believe, up to 200, which I'm not touching those, but they're available. On those days, I'll typically do something like a heavier flat dumbbell press, and I'll use the 140s, and I'll get about 6 to 8 repetitions. I'll do 3 sets here, typically no reps left in the tank, 0 RIR. Now, that's it for the first exercise. The next movement I'll move on to is gonna be another press variation. But since we already did a free weight press movement, I generally like the second movement to be some type of machine or an exercise where there's not as much stabilization required. The stabilizer muscles were already stimulated. We already trained those pecs very heavy. Now we want to get in some additional pressing volume. So in that case, the next exercise that I typically do is some type of hammer strength press, either a decline press or an incline press, depending on what I did for the first exercise. If I did a flat press, I'll do an incline press. If I did an incline on the first exercise, I might do a flat or a decline hammer press. Personally, on this one, I like to go as heavy as possible. 3 sets here. I'll keep the rep range somewhere between 6 and 8 repetitions. I like to go heavy on hammer strength presses or machine presses simply because, again, I'm not stabilizing the weight. I'm literally just using those pecs and contracting as hard as possible. Next exercise I'll do here is another machine press variation, this one for the shoulders. Now, typically when I combine shoulders and chest work together, it's because there's a ton of overlap between chest pressing on the front delts and just overall shoulder work. If you're doing enough incline pressing and you're doing enough chest pressing volume in general, you might not even need much shoulder work, for the front delts at least. So in my case, just for good measure, I do 1 exercise for shoulders for front pressing, and that I'll also use a hammer strength press. Again, I've done my heavy free weight pressing, I've gotten more volume in on the hammer strength for chest press. This is really just the icing on the cake and make sure that those front delts are finished off. Same exact protocol, 3 sets here, 6 to 8 repetitions. And that is literally it for my front delt work throughout the entire week of training. But we're not done with chest yet. We just strategically place those shoulder pressing exercises in there to keep all of the heavy pressing early in the workout. So let's go back to chest work here. We're gonna do some less demanding and less taxing exercises just to get more blood and more volume into those pecs. The next exercise I'll typically place here is an isolation movement for the pecs, something like a cable fly or a pec deck. Personally, I'm a huge fan of the pec deck. This is an exercise where I'll focus on the stretch and the contraction above all else. 3 sets here, high repetitions, as high as 20 and as low as 12. But here's the key. I'm not really focusing on using a ton of weight here. I really just want to get as much blood into the muscle as possible and to stretch those pecs as much as possible. We've already trained them very heavy. We've created a lot of muscle damage. This is about maximizing the pump and getting a ton of blood and volume in here. 3 sets here, and after those 3 sets, those pecs should be fully pumped. Now, because chest is a body part that I am trying to bring up during this training block, we have one more exercise thrown in there. And this is more of a specialization movement and not necessarily a requirement. If your chest is not a weak point, those 3 exercises are plenty. But remember now, this is a chest and shoulder workout with a bit of strategic overlap for the delts, the back, and the triceps. So let's finish off with those delts first, and then let me walk you through the strategic overlap. One of the most important parts of the delts to hit for overall aesthetics and appearance are the side delts and the rear delts, which are both trained during this session. After we've done all the heavy pressing movement, the rest of this workout is more about fine tuning and bringing that roundness and the fullness to the delts. So first exercise, we're going to start with a typical lateral raise here. This can be a dumbbell lateral raise, seated lateral raise, cable, or machine here. Really doesn't matter, and honestly at this point, I just rotate through them as needed and by feel. 5 sets here, 15 to 20 repetitions. One thing I really like about training delts on the same day as pecs is once your pecs are fully engorged with blood and you start doing some lateral raises, that blood just shifts right from the pecs and pools right in those side delts, giving you a massive side delt pump. So very high reps here. 5 sets, high volume. Again, we're thinking blood. After just 5 sets here and all the additional indirect volume we did from chest and shoulder pressing, those side delts should be pretty much cooked. But we're not done here. We also want to hit those rear delts to make sure they're not neglected. But we're doing something creative here, which again is the overlap, so that back gets a little bit more high frequency than just typically once per week. So our rear delt exercise is also a very solid upper back movement. Typically, I'll alternate here between two exercises, something like a super wide grip lat pull down or a super wide grip row. Basically, what we're doing here is we're modifying a pull down or a row, which targets the upper back very well, to be very rear delt dominant. Personally, I do this by grabbing the widest grip possible, and instead of pulling that bar all the way down, I'm only pulling it down to about the chin or nose level, squeezing those rear delts. This is one of the best rear delt mass builders you could do, but also keep in mind that it does hit the lats and the upper back as well. So we're getting some additional upper back and lat work, even on chest and shoulder day. 4 sets here, 15 to 20 repetitions, high rep work. Now this session is almost done. All the hard work is done, but we're gonna do a little bit of tricep touch up here. Now, I train arms directly on Friday, but in this session, because we've also hit a lot of chest work, we've gotten some indirect tricep work, we're gonna finish them off again with a little bit of creative overlap. I'm gonna do one exercise. Typically, it's an overhead tricep extension, just because that's a variation I don't necessarily hit a lot of in my other arm day. And what we're gonna do here is we're gonna keep the weight very light because we don't want this to be taxing. We're gonna keep the reps high, and we're also gonna keep the rest periods very short, like 30 seconds. 4 sets, 20 reps, 30 seconds rest. I might be using half the weight I normally would on a day where I was resting fully. Keep in mind, this is pump work and this is high frequency training. This is not meant to be all out heavy mass building training. We'll save that for Friday's workout. After that, this session is done. We've effectively trained the chest directly, the shoulders directly. We've hit the rear delts directly with some indirect work for the lats and the upper back, and the triceps indirectly with some creative overlap in there. Essentially, we've hit all the major muscle groups of the upper body. That's it for day 1. We're gonna go home, rest and recover, and get ready for day 2, which is leg day. Now, legs are actually trained twice in this split because it is a weak point that I'm trying to bring up, or I shouldn't even necessarily say a weak point, but it is a focus in my training at the moment. My arms have always been a strong point. My back has come up over the years. I'm also trying to bring up the shoulders and the delts a bit, but the legs are a body part where I really want to emphasize them so that I just have symmetry top to bottom and that my upper body's not overpowering them. Bodybuilding is a completely different animal than just looking good on camera or social media, right? So symmetry is key here. So in that case, one of those workouts are gonna be more quad focused and the second one more hamstring and glute dominant. Tuesday is gonna be my quad focused training session, but I start every session with calves first. Calves are one of those body parts where it's never really been any fun to do. I don't really get much enjoyment out of it, so I just get it done early in the session. Otherwise, I might neglect it at the end, especially after doing some heavy quad work. So every session starts with one exercise for calves. Typically on Tuesday, I'll do more of a straight leg calf variation. So that could be a leg press calf raise, a standing calf raise, maybe something like a donkey calf raise. Now I'll basically get on one of these machines and I'll warm up for about 20 minutes before I even get to my leg work. Lots of reps here, lots of sets. Typically, again, just one exercise, and I'll do up to 10 sets on that exercise. This is calf work, guys. This is not taxing. This is not demanding. It's not like doing 10 sets of squats. I'm literally just getting as much blood into the muscle as possible here. Again, there's plenty of flexibility in here. Again, this is contest prep. This is not something meticulously tracked like in the off season where I'm forcing growth. After I get done with that, I'm moving on to a heavy compound mass building exercise for the quads. Now, I've been rotating a bunch of exercises here just based on how my body's feeling. I've had a lot of issues in the past where I can't do typical heavy barbell squats, and I've had to make a lot of adjustments over the last few months and even years. But lately, things have been going very well. I've been alternating typically between a belt squat, or I'll actually be doing something like a Hatfield squat. Now, both of these exercises, again, I'm gonna have to go based on feel. But typically what I'll do here is follow a very similar protocol to what I do on the first exercise for calves. I'll start very light, but I'll start at about 12 repetitions, one plate, going up by a quarter or another plate. Every set doing 12 reps until it's heavy. Once it's heavy, I'll start dropping the reps. I'll go as low as 6. On something like a belt squat, that'll typically take me up to about 8 plates each side. And on the Hatfield squat, I'm at about 4 plates each side. I'll get up to that heaviest set and I'll typically do about 2 working sets here with that weight. That's not to take away from any of the other sets. Many of them are very challenging, but as far as working sets, there are about 2 that we can count here. After that, I'll go into some type of single leg work here to get a bit more hamstrings and a bit more glute tie-in, but it's still a quad dominant movement. Typically, that's something like a single leg press or a dumbbell lunge. Same protocol, very light, ramping up the weight to 2 top sets, going with about 12 repetitions here. This leg day is really all volume based. It's not super heavy, and again, it's based on what I could do at this point and to get the most out of my training. I'll finish off that quad day with one more exercise for quads. Now, typically on this day, I won't do any high rep leg extensions here or heavy weight. I'll do more of a low volume, high intensity, intense technique. I'll typically start with a weight that I could do for about 20 repetitions. I'll do one single leg for 20 repetitions. Then without rest, I'll do another 20 on the next leg. I'll go right back to the original leg, do as many as I can. That might be about 15. Then I'll go to the other leg. I'll keep doing this for as many sets as I can until I can only get about 5 repetitions on the last set. So this is one all-out working set. And after the high reps on the first compound movement, the second compound movement, and then this isolation exercise, my quads are completely cooked. Now to finish out this leg day, I will incorporate some hamstring work, again for that high frequency overlap, but this is not typically the heavy hamstring work that I will do on Saturday. So one exercise for the hamstrings, an isolation movement, whether that's a seated or lying hamstring curl, 3 to 5 sets here, 12 to 15 repetitions, and then one lighter stretching movement for those hamstrings. Typically this could be something like a hyperextension here with a bit of weight. Again, same protocol, 3 sets, 15 repetitions. And that's it for day 2 leg day. Now Wednesday, we have one more day of training before a rest day. Now, typically, I'm not a huge fan of placing 3 very demanding workouts back to back. However, for recovery purposes, I've also modified this workout a bit so that there's a lot of machine work here, which is just typically less demanding than many barbell free weight exercises that I would typically do on back day. So while this is an intense back session, I've also modified it specifically for recovery purposes, especially after a very heavy leg day prior. So now this back day has been modified completely so that I'm focusing on my weak points. If you guys have been watching my content for however long, you're gonna typically see in most of my training programs and my videos, some heavy pull-ups, heavy rows, heavy barbell free weight movements, right? And while that is the bread and butter mass building foundation training that I do, this workout is modified a bit different based on the entire training split. So there's a lot more emphasis on some machines here, again for recovery purposes, and also modified techniques to make these movements more very lat specific or upper back specific. Whereas the mass building exercises, I'm targeting to train everything. Again, this is very specific to me training for this bodybuilding competition. So first exercise I'm gonna do on this day is gonna be a single arm machine row. The goal here when using a single arm machine row is to really isolate and target the lat. So we're gonna keep those elbows tucked into the body as close as possible, and we're gonna pull that elbow down and back. We're not just moving weight from A to B here. We're squeezing and contracting as hard as possible. Now, personally, an issue that I always run into with back training is I'm very strong on these pulling movements, much stronger than what my body weight is in relation to my strength. So a lot of times on some of these machines, I could pull weight that's actually difficult for me just to stabilize my body weight under. So to counter that, I'm not really trying to do 8 to 10 repetitions on these exercises simply because the weight I need to use is so heavy. So typically I'm going as high as 20 repetitions here, just so that I could target and isolate the lats and I'm not thinking about stabilizing my body weight. 3 sets here, 20 repetitions, squeezing and contracting as hard as possible. And even after just these 3 sets, my lats are extremely pumped. Now I'll follow that up with another exercise that I do pretty much the same technique on, but now we're gonna trade it through a vertical pulling movement. So typically that's an underhand grip lat pull down. Again, for this one, I wanna do one single arm, keep that elbow tucked into the body, pull straight down. 3 sets, 20 repetitions. Again, this is not your typical mass building sets and reps protocol, but I can tell you this, if you do these 2 exercises back to back correctly, those lats will be on fire. Now that's it for the lat work in this training. I typically break up my entire back training into 2 sections, lat training and upper back thickness training. So your upper back thickness training is gonna be more of those rhomboids, the lower traps, the rear delts, and the middle back. Next exercise I'll typically do here is an overhand grip seated cable row. Taking a bit of a wider grip here, and we're pulling it a little bit more higher on the torso. If we wanted to go specifically with the lats, I'd be pulling it to the belly button, but we're pulling it a bit closer to the sternum here. 3 sets, 15 repetitions, squeeze, contract. We're gonna follow that up with one more exercise for the upper back, one that's gonna be a bit more upper back and rear delt emphasis, and we're gonna use a chest supported machine row here with 2 arms and the elbows flared out completely. Those elbows flared out completely are gonna take the lats out of the equation a bit and really place that tension on the upper back. 3 sets, 15 repetitions. After that, the entire back is cooked. We're gonna finish it off with some trap work, 3 sets of 12 on shrugs. And for the creative overlap that we're gonna do in this training, we're gonna do 1 exercise for biceps, the same protocol we did on Monday for triceps. 3 to 5 sets here, 30 seconds rest, about half the weight that I typically use. Again, we're just getting pump and blood flow to the muscle. We've done a lot of high volume for upper back and lat work here. The biceps have already got plenty of indirect work. We're just kind of finishing them off. Again, we're gonna do the heavy training later in the week. But for now, that's it for back. We're gonna go home, rest, and recover. And then Thursday, we're gonna take completely off to rest. Friday, we're gonna come back in. We've already hit the chest and shoulders. We've already hit the legs. We've already hit the back. But we've also incorporated some indirect work where we basically hit the entire body. But Friday, we're gonna come in and we're gonna get some direct work on the arm day, since we haven't had an arm training session yet. Now, if you guys have watched my content over the years, you'll notice a trend here, and you'll see that my arm training really hasn't changed much at all. A few basic movements. We're gonna start with a barbell curl, then we're gonna go into a dumbbell curl, and we're gonna finish off with a cable curl. For triceps, we're gonna do a tricep press down with a V-bar. We're gonna do some easy bar skull crushers, and then we're gonna finish off with some dips. All of these done, 3 sets, 6 to 12 repetitions. There's been no need to change my arm training. It's been one of the body parts that have grown the best for me over the years, and at this stage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Now, the creative overlap that we have in this training session is actually strategically placing dips in this workout. So we train chest directly on Monday, but at the end of this workout, we're gonna be doing dips, which is a great tricep mass builder, but we're gonna be doing these more with a chest pressing emphasis. So we're gonna lean forward more, and we're gonna go for a nice deep stretch of those pecs. The goal here is to get in very heavy and intense arm training, again, those basic mass building exercises. And then at the end of the session, again, we're gonna be doing those dips specifically for the chest, but they are a massive mass building exercise for the triceps as well. We're training the chest directly on Monday. Friday is a great opportunity while the chest is already recovered from Monday's session to get in a second stimulus for the week. This is why I say this is a body part split, but with creative overlap. That creative overlap also turns this into a high frequency training split. So when you think about training splits, even though this is an arm day, we might be stimulating other muscle groups effectively. In this case, this is a very effective chest day as well. We'll finish off that session with one other direct or indirect work, depending how you look at it, for the side delts. The side delts, we're gonna follow that same protocol that I follow for the other body parts that get hit with higher frequency. We're gonna go about half the weight we typically do, 3 to 5 sets, higher repetitions, 30 seconds rest. There's a lot of blood in those delts from the dips. There's a lot of blood in those triceps from the tricep work. We're gonna take some of that blood and we're gonna draw it into those side delts, which could always use a bit more volume. After that, this session is done, and we've completed 4 workouts for the week already. We got 1 more training session on Saturday before completely resting on Sunday and finishing out the week. That Saturday workout is the second leg day. Again, the glute and hamstring dominant leg day. Saturday's workout, we're gonna follow that same protocol for calves, but since we did a straight leg calf variation, we're gonna do a seated calf variation. Basically, we're gonna get on a seated calf raise. We're gonna start pumping up very light, 20 repetitions, go plate by plate by plate, till we get up to 8 to 10 sets here. Again, this is about a 20-minute warm-up here, which is fine on leg day. I'd rather do this than spend time doing cardio, moving my body. I'd rather just get that blood flowing, plant myself on the calf raise machine, start getting a pump in the blood and the muscle. After that, we're gonna move on to some heavy hamstring work. We're gonna hit a seated hamstring curl machine. Personally, I really like seated leg curls. We're gonna go as heavy as possible on here. We're gonna do 4 sets, 6 to 10 repetitions. Really trying to target and isolate those hamstrings. Next, we're gonna throw in an exercise that does work the quads very well, but we're doing this specifically for the hamstrings and the glutes, and that is a heavy barbell split squat. These I'll do 4 sets, 6 to 8 repetitions here. Again, this is a mass building movement that I'm going as heavy as possible on. After these 2 movements, the glutes and the hamstrings are gonna be fully pumped. But we're not done there. We're gonna train those glutes directly. We're gonna do something like a barbell hip thrust here. Same protocol, 4 sets, 6 to 8 repetitions. Again, we're using this as a mass building exercise going as heavy as possible. Now we've hit those hamstrings, we've hit those glutes. We're gonna finish this off with 1 exercise for the quads, again, to keep the frequency high. This is where we're gonna do the high repetition leg extension work. Again, we're not going for heavy quad work here. We're going for that pump, we're going for that volume. So 4 sets here, 15 to 20 repetitions. Now, everything we've done on both leg days are extremely taxing and demanding, and it's very difficult. But when you talk about pain or pain tolerance, high repetition leg extensions are second to none. There's absolutely nothing more painful in my opinion than doing 4 sets of 20 repetitions with a heavy weight on leg extensions. So I promise you, even though this is the light, higher rep work, it is probably the most painful out of all of it. After this, I'm done. I'm going home, I'm resting on Sunday, getting ready to repeat it next week. And that's been my training in a nutshell for the last 12 weeks. And it's served me very well. Now, to recap what this training method is, it's definitely on the higher end of volume. This is not some of the typical low volume work you'll see, but that's been the goal here with this phase of training. Like I said, I've utilized this during periods of caloric restriction and calorie surplus, and I've been able to not only maintain my lean muscle tissue during dieting, but also grow lean muscle tissue during those gaining phases. Now, deep in a contest prep, this style of training could be hard to sustain. Some of these sessions are upwards of 2 hours, and as calories get lower, I generally like to limit my gym session time as much as possible. So the next 12 weeks of training that I'm going to be following is a different block of training, different style of training, and that's going to take me through the tail end of prep. And overall, throughout these 12 weeks being in prep, I'm not going to lie, I've had days where I say this is way too much, I need to cut it down. But I've also had plenty of days where training just feels great. And to be honest with you, at this stage in training right now, everything is just firing on all cylinders. I'm in a great spot right now. So I'm glad during those periods of time where I really felt like I was doing too much, I needed to pull back, I decided just to keep going and listen to what my body was telling me. Like I said, I completed all 12 weeks of this without having to modify anything, and I would consider that a very successful block of training. But now I know where I'm at. I know that we have 9 weeks to the first show, 12 to the next show, and calories are starting to get lower. I'm starting to get even leaner, so things need to be modified. How this prep is very different from previous preps I've done. Preps I've done, I was much younger. I would consider myself a bit more wiser, a bit more mature here, and able to look at things objectively. Previous preps, it was all about training as hard as possible every session, dieting as hard as possible, and really just making things harder. I attributed harder with better. But the truth is, at the end of the day, harder is not better, better is better. So the key is modifying your training, your diet, your recovery, everything you need to get the most out of it. And sometimes that's not necessarily pushing harder, but actually pulling back. So this next stage of training, it's gonna be modified a bit more to suit the fact that I'm 12 weeks out. And I'll walk you guys exactly through that in the next video. But for now, if you wanna take any of the strategies I implemented in my training and spoke about in this video, the takeaway for you here is you can follow a more traditional body part style split. But if you implement strategic overlap correctly, you could be training body parts multiple times per week within that body part split. It's not as cut and black as you either follow a bro split or you follow high frequency push-pull legs. Get creative with your training and make it suit your needs. But if you don't want to do any of that and you want an actual clear plan to follow, one that I personally believe will get you the best results possible, follow along with my Project Mass 2.0 training program, which you can find down below. I'll walk you through every workout, every set, every rep. I'll explain how to modify these workouts based on your needs, and I'll give you pro tips along the way. If you want to follow along the journey and you want to get massive in the process, follow my training program down below, Project Mass 2.0. And as always, if you want to see more of the best original bodybuilding content just like this, make sure to hit subscribe.